Yes. Well, no
like Mac.
that's all you need to be, just in time.
In time. Looked to me like a couple of them were a bit high, particularly Victoria at the start.
Well, welcome to the fifth race in SGP Gawler, which is just coming up to the start at the moment. Another 1 minute from the start, so we'll have a look at the start, and then we'll talk to you about the task and the weather. But they're coming up to the start. And Mandy, what is the maximum start height today?
6,000 feet.
So we have a much better soaring day today. We have a big soaring day today, and a longer task. But as they approach the start, we're now 27 seconds away. It looks like V8 has started, but I don't think if we look up closer, I think we'll find that he hasn't actually. There he is, heading towards the start gate. Yeah, possibly he started. No, I don't think so. It just looks like he's either going to be right on time or a few seconds early. But V8, that's Matt Atkinson in JS1, is going to be the first across the line.
Bendis 2.
Oh, sorry, Bendis 2. Excuse me.
I keep calling him Richard, so we're even now.
All right.
But certainly, yes, he's got line honours, hasn't he? If he didn't break the start, he's got line honours.
Yes. So now it's the start time was 1:55, and it's now 5 seconds past. So he was either right on the gate or a few seconds early. We'll find out at the end of the race. Followed by the other three pilots with Uniform Kilo Golf with Jeff Brown in a JS1 at the rear, and it looks like they're all off to a good start on what promises to be a really good soaring day. Yeah,
the local club guiders that launched earlier are getting up to 9,000 feet,
right,
which was forecast. We're expecting climbs close to 13 or 14,000 feet later in the day. Depending on where they go, they may be limited by airspace. We have a flight level 125, and that may limit them. We had a fairly complicated briefing today about the airspace. There's plenty of opportunities to get it wrong today. We've tried to test them in an area where they can make the most of the weather without being troubled by it, but just catch a corner somewhere or just get a bump when you don't want it. And as we found the other day, it can easily happen if you don't have big enough margins.
Well, we'll have a look at the scoring as well soon, because we'll just see where they are, because we've got today and tomorrow. Earlier on in this competition, I've been saying, well, there's plenty of time. The Grand Prix scoring means that people can get nothing on one day and then still be up at the top a day or two later. But we've only got 2 races left, so it's all getting a bit more critical. Now, they've all got off to a good start, and they're heading up to the Shiao Clog. It was a remote start today, by the way, starting at Concordia, away from the airfield, and they're tracking to the north.
The reason for that, of course, is that the start line over the airfield goes into the 4,500 foot of the airspace, so it wasn't feasible to have a start line over the airfield today, with the convection going so much higher.
And a start height of 6,000. But let's have a look at the grid a few minutes ago, just before launch. I had a chat with them to see what they all thought about today's race. So let's have a look at see what everybody thought about it.
A little bit of cumulus today, but still quite a bit of blue as well.
And have you got any change in tactics today, or what's your strategy today?
There's no tactics in Grand Prix. I think you just try to fly as fast as you can, because it's not always possible to plan everything, you know.
Great day.
It's good to
bit of Q, bit of a change from the blue, so yeah, really looking forward to it. Nice high day.
And a longer task?
Longer task, 380 kilometres, but it should be pretty quick, fingers crossed. I think today we'll find ourselves a bit more on our own than we have previously, so we probably won't stick together because there'll be a bit of difference in routing, I think, because of the clouds.
Fantastic, hopefully. Be a classic day with thermals to cumulus might even get 14,000 feet, but certainly 13. It's going to be a crack of a day.
And a longer task today?
It's somewhat longer. It should only be 2.5 to possibly 3 hours, but 380 kilometres.
So you're expecting speeds in excess of 120, 130?
Oh, I'm expecting better than 140.
140?
So, 117 yesterday should be a lot better.
This video is also
should be good. No, the only difference today is because it's so high, cumulus clouds, there's no advantage in gaggling, so I think we're all going to split up, take our own, make our own decisions. So it'd be quite different in terms of watching it for the people watching the live tracking.
Looking towards the northish, the cloud base looks like well above 10,000 feet. Should be a fabulous day. No, I think I'll just get high, stay high and fly fast and see how that pans out.
They're all very happy with it.
Okay, Sean, today we've got quite a lot higher convection forecast, so that's pretty exciting, and the possibility of queues, so a longer task and hopefully faster flying today. Well, we may get a little more spread out because there's queues and each pilot might want to do their own thing, but I've quite enjoyed flying with the gaggle in the last few days, so I'll try and fly with company where that's possible.
Yes, well, as you can see, all the competitors are looking forward to some great flying today, as well as a great race, and it seems the tactics are pretty straightforward. Fly fast.
Good plan.
Yep. So they're now well and truly on the start, onto their first leg. So perhaps, Mandy, you can just talk us through the tasks today. Where are they heading
Sure.
next?
So there's a bit of a convergence expected in the area. You can see it's marked by queues. The first leg, of course, as usual, is to get them north through the airspace. So their first turn is at Kapunda, about 35 kilometres away, and then they're going to head north-northwest and do a bit of a cat's cradle and come back. And the ambition there is to get them as much as possible under the queues. Wherever, that's it. They're going there next.
Wherever, which is 157 kilometres.
Yeah.
So right up there.
Yeah, we're confident that they won't be troubled by the sea breeze. We've got a northeasterly wind at the moment, and that should keep the sea breeze out. There may be a sea breeze when they're coming home, but they'll be on final glide by then, so it won't matter.
And these hills along before the coast here, they'll keep.
They're remarkable, yeah. They're lovely actually. Really nice place to go camping if you're so inclined. But yes, that'll be a bit of a block as well. Yeah,
a bit of a block to any sea breeze.
Yeah.
But and then next to Jamestown,
it's the farming community in the northeast. Yeah, it's about 100. Well, that's 150 k's from Gawler, but yeah.
And that's a 37 kilometre leg.
Yeah, that's our milk run 300 that the early cross-country pilots, they do. Jamestown return for their 300 kilometre batch.
So 150 out and return, 150 out and 150 back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back to the Shio Clog for the control point again.
Back in. Yeah, they took off to the northeast. We do expect them to be landing to the southwest today. And of course, being the weekend, it's a much busier sky today. We had a lot of local pilots wanting to fly, some students doing some circuits in the early morning cool, and we can see on the website there are pilots flying from the other clubs in South Australia at the moment, so they may have some company, but it's a big sky. If they're getting up to 14,000 feet, they're not likely to have any problems. It's a big sky today.
Okay, and you can see there's the Gawler Airfield with the finish line, and there was the remote start at Concordia, and we'll catch up with them again now as they're heading towards Kapunda, and just see perhaps what kind of altitudes they're getting at this early stage of the race.
I don't think they've found a climb since they've started. They're all looking for their first climb.
Yes, well, they're all at 1,300 metres, but on a day like today, maybe they're in no rush to get the first climb.
Maybe, and of course the climbs are more spread out on a high day.
Yes, so David Peach is at the end at 1,400 metres, 1,350 metres, and this is what Dave Peach is looking at from the back. Now, his ambition today was to get high and fly fast. I'm sure that's the ambition for them all, but at the moment they're not high. But somebody surely will find a strong climb, we think, pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got a plan. We've got a scattered queue today, unlike the other days, which were really largely blue with only a handful of cumulus. Today we've got scattered queues, which obviously make it a lot easier to navigate. You can tell where the lift is pretty easily, so I'm sure they've got a route planned ahead and they're heading for a particular cloud, hoping to get a good climb.
Yes, and as Dave Peach was saying when on the grid, he was looking to the north and could see queue forming. And when we say scattered queue, it's a kind of a light scattered queue, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's 2/8 at the most. Yeah,
as opposed to 4/8. It's 2, maybe 3/8, and that's here.
Sort of day that in Queensland they would call a blue day.
Yeah.
Because they always have 6 or 7 8s.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so in a second we'll just have a quick look at the task and give you a little bit more of a look at the weather. Okay, so you can find the task on the web page. That's Australia23sgp.aero, and there it is. What Mandy was just talking about: Concordia, Kapunda, Wirrabara, Jamestown.
We're Riverborough.
Yes,
various ways.
We were talking at dinner last night about the various South Australian pronunciations of the towns. They're common around Australia, but everywhere has funny differences. So Jamestown is definitely Jamestown, and Sheoklog, and back to the finish. And then we'll just quickly show you the weather. There's the weather from Skyside. That's the point forecast, showing up to 10,000 foot locally, and this is up into the top of the area where they're tracking, looking at thermals of up to 10,000 feet, possibly 14,000 feet later on.
Yes.
The wind is markedly different from the one that we've been having. At last, the high pressure system has moved across, and we now have winds tracking from the northeast as opposed from the southeast or the east, and they're moving more northerly. And as you can see there from the synoptic chart, we've got the high pressure moving across and bringing now very strong conditions with air coming from the north. And here's a pretty picture of Australia.
I remember when I lived in the UK and we had this picture, they had to actually draw the coastline of the country because it was always covered in cloud and you couldn't tell what you were looking at unless they actually drew the outline of the country.
Yeah.
But we've been so lucky we have no high cloud at all. The whole week has been...
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
No high cloud. You can see up in the north, you can see the remains of this tropical cyclone, which is still hanging around, still bringing flowing air across the continent over to Sydney and the east coast where it's still feeding in and bringing rain.
And then the risk tomorrow, of course, with that trough that's approaching, is that the trough will allow that air to feed down to us. The instability is good. We welcome the instability, but we don't want the moisture. So tomorrow's forecast is looking a little bit mixed. We may have some storms.
Okay, I'll just go back to... I'll tell you what, in a second I'll just take you back to... we can have a look at tomorrow's map. But in the meantime, tomorrow's weather chart. But in the meantime, let's see where they're up to. Okay, they've now got to climb.
Uh-huh.
And they're up above 2,000 meters. And at this stage of the race, they are all still together.
And I imagine they'll stay in this one. If it's a reasonable climb, they'll probably get to 3,000 meters based on what the other pilots were doing in that area earlier in the day. So...
Now, all the pilots were expecting, because it's a high convection day, that at some point they would, and with Q's marking it as well, that at some point they would split up. There's no need for them to be in a gaggle. They're going to have plenty of opportunities to find a climb, and but that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a Grand Prix, and they want to make sure it's not a question of having a nice flight. It's a question of being ahead of the other people. So.
The trouble is, if you're chasing two people and one goes left and one goes right, who do you choose to follow? That's the trick, isn't it? You just go straight ahead and fly your own race, or do you pick one and then the two of you could be slower than that one? It's difficult tactics on a day like today. Yesterday was actually probably more straightforward because they all went around together and that's what they did, which was a great race to watch.
Yes. But this will make an interesting race to watch as well for precisely the reason you're talking about is that what are they going to do? Who's going to go where and who's going to make the right decision? And yesterday was won for the third time by Peter Temple. So Peter Temple's very much in the lead at the moment. So let's just have a quick look at the scoreboard. So this is the results so far. Pete Temple on 18 points, followed by Jeff Brown on 14 points, and Mac Ichikawa on 12 points. So Mac is the maximum score they can get today, 6 points still.
Yes.
Okay, so they can get 6 points maximum. So Mac needs to win, and Pete Temple needs Pete Temple to come last.
But then he gets 1 point, so there's still okay.
So Mac Ichikawa has been coming second and been very consistent and racing very well, but he really does need to beat Pete Temple today and then beat him tomorrow as well.
And in fact, maybe that's a strategy. Maybe Mac will be chasing Peter. Maybe that's what they're going to do.
And the same is true for Jeff Brown. He's got a little bit more comfort, and he's only 4 points behind Pete Temple. But, he needs to beat Pete Temple, and Pete needs to He needs to win at least one of these days, I guess. Wouldn't it be correct?
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow there's the bonus point, of course.
Yes, so and if he came second, I think I'd have to do the quick calculation, but depending on how you do it, even if he came second for the next 2 days, he's 4 points behind Jeff Brown. So
It'd still be okay, yeah.
Might still be okay, depending if Maki Chikawa beats Jeff Brown.
Yes.
But
it could get more complicated if someone breaks airspace, as they did on that other day. Then
yes.
the points change again. So
so it's all very much still up in the air with 2 races to go. So today's tactics will definitely be very important on how they race this 380 kilometer race. By the way, now you heard Pete Temple say that he's hoping or expecting even speeds of in excess of 140 kph. So we're looking at a longer race than we've had, but definitely a faster one.
Yeah, they must be wishing they could be fully ballasted today, because of course they're all limited with the wing loading, and so they're only partially ballasted, which I think they're about 50 to 100 kilos under their maximum weight. So they'll be wishing that they had a bit more weight, I suppose, as the conditions are just so strong. And look, they've set off at just under 3,000 meters, so that's about what we're expecting based on what we'd seen with the gliders earlier in the day that had launched. But of course, as the conditions improve and they move further north, they'll be in better airspace. The airspace here is only 10,000 feet, so they can't afford to go much higher than 3,000 metres where they are. But as they head to the northwest, as they round Kapunda, once they've flown about 35 k's in that direction, they'll be into a higher area of airspace, and it'll be a bit easier for them to go perhaps even to 4,000 metres.
Yes, well, I had a quick look at the climb rates they were getting, and they seem to be getting only about 2 meters in that last thermal, so it wasn't huge yet, but it's early in the day, and they've got yet to get to the best airspace.
But it looks like you're right. It looks like Mac's pushing, and he's decided that's what he's going to do. He's got to go for it. You're not going to get the points by following, are you?
No. Well, I did ask Mac on the grid what his tactics were, and as you heard him say, he said he doesn't think there are any tactics in a Grand Prix race. You just have to win. You just have to beat the others.
Yeah. So they're flying over the Barossa again. We talked about this before. It's the wine region that a lot of the wine comes from. We haven't had a chance to go to the wineries during this competition. Normally there's a non-flying day, and we managed to do a bit of a group trip out to one of the wineries, but we've flown every day now, so we haven't had an opportunity to do that.
Yes, there was one no-fly day, which was that
Monday,
the first day, which was the first race day, and that was Monday. But I think everybody was still early in the competition, including myself, and getting everything lined up, getting everything ready.
Yeah, there was a lot of fettling going on.
Yeah, so nobody was, apart from Matt Aitkinson, really felt they had the time, I think, to kind of go off sightseeing, which is a real shame, because it really is a beautiful part of the country. And tomorrow I was going to bring you some nice photographs and show you a bit of the Barossa and the Clare Valleys, and just give some of our international viewers a flavour of what it looks like. It's a very different part of Australia from the east coast where I am. The air and the vegetation and the colour of the eucalyptus trees might sound funny. They're all eucalyptus trees, but the colour of them is a bit different from the trees we get over on the east coast, and it's a very, very beautiful part of the world. Okay, so they've now gone into the first turn point of Kapunda, and they're all pretty much together as they head up on the long track to Wirrabura.
I think it's Wirrabura.
Wirrabura. That sounds about right. Wirrabura. They're on the track to Wirrabura, which is 158 kilometres. And we'll have a look and see what that looks like from the cockpit of Jeff Brown at the moment.
I'm surprised how close together they are. You know, I really thought once they'd started that scatter, I really didn't expect them to still be this close together after 40 k's of racing. It's interesting, isn't it? I guess that's the tactic. I guess they can't afford to let the others out of their sights.
Well, it's also, that was the first leg, and they have only had one climb so far. They're still just at 2.5. Matt Aitkinson is at 2.8. 1,000 meters, and but this leg, when I say we're looking at the cockpit of Jeff Brown, unfortunately, it's not good enough yet that we can see the actual weather that they've got. So we can't see if they really are seeing cumulus, but whether they're going to be paying much attention to the cumulus at this stage they're just flying on track and in confidence they're going to hit it.
Yeah, I think if you've got scattered cues, I think you know that's where the strong lift is. So you at least try and make a line and make a few line up. You don't want to make huge deviations, but if there's a cue here and a cue here and a cue here, you're going to line them up and try and make the most of it. I think get a line of energy and.
So they'll be trying to figure out the sky. They've got 158 kilometers ahead of them now, and they're trying to figure out the sky and the best line.
And it's going to be interesting. I mean, yesterday the difference between second and third place was 9 seconds. So Jeff Brown was desperately checking Maki Chikawa's trace, looking for a 10-second penalty. It was a very dramatic finish yesterday. They were all very close, but in particular, second and third, there was only a 9-second spacing between them. Today, I would have expected that they'd already have spread out a bit more and that we're going to see, a few minutes between them all. But it'll be interesting. They could finish together, I guess.
Okay, so up ahead, Pete Temple's at least trying for a thermal. Made a turn anyway.
Yeah, it looks like he and Mac are in the first peloton, doesn't it, today?
Yep. Well, they are a bit more split up than they were yesterday. Yesterday, they were all heading along like a almost formation flying on this stage of the race.
Matt Atkinson said, "You could have thrown a blanket over us. We'd all be under the blanket." I thought that was a nice expression.
Yes,
He said it'd be quite a big blanket, but we'd all be under the blanket.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pete's turning. So, of course, we've been busy running the race and flying the race and debriefing the race, and so we haven't had a chance to see all of this media stuff. And I was saying to Sean, hopefully we'll get some spare time during the coming weeks to sit down and have a look at it, because we're certainly getting some positive feedback from different people around the place. So we've yet to watch it ourselves.
Yes, but it's been great to be a part of this competition, I must say. I always enjoy being at competitions and helping out, and the Grand Prix is a really fun type of competition to be at. I was running it at the same time, I think it is.
You could slide it along. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
Yep. And I'm just going to show you the live gliding view now, just to give us a different view. And that's what they've gone so far. These are using the GFA trackers provided by Live Gliding, and the people who run a Grand Prix race in Australia called Sky Race, and they've got their own system which works really, really well. I must say, it's a beautiful look.
Well, the other advantage is that you've got a little screen, and if you commit a penalty, so if you start a bit too high or you start a bit too fast, you get a message on the screen, and you can do a 360, or you can drop 500 feet to expunge the penalty, a bit like in sailing.
Right.
Which means that when you finish, the person that crosses the line first is the winner.
Right. So there we have them leaving that thermal, and with Maki Chikawa out in front now. We'll go back again to have a look at Silent Wings. Yeah, so they're still 2,800 meters, 6,000 feet or so. Or no, what am I talking about? Nearly 10,000 feet.
Well, they're in the 10,000-foot airspace sector. This is a gliding sector called Delta 206, and we've been lucky enough to get that released to 10,000 feet every day. So they can't really climb too much higher until they get another 40 k's past Kapunda. Once they've probably 40 k's past Kapunda, they'll be able to climb a little bit higher because they'll be in the next sector.
Right. So whether the sky is working to higher than 10,000 feet, we are not going to find out, I don't think, until they get quite a bit. Well, maybe they're 20k from Kapunda already.
It's hard because when you're in touch with the cumulus, you can just dolphin along underneath them, can't you, and just sort of stay connected, but they're artificially limited with this gap between them and the cloud base. It can make it a bit trickier to try and find a good line.
Yes, but they're probably at that altitude. They may well be in the best piece of the airspace anyway, the strongest bit of the climb, perhaps. Yeah. Maybe not.
I mean, the other thing you can do is look at the shadows. Sometimes you can get a really good idea from looking at the shadows on the ground where the clouds actually are, because when you're flying along, your perspective is incorrect. You don't really get the perception of where the clouds really are because you can't see the 3D effects so well. But sometimes by looking down on the ground, you can actually pick a line of the alignment of the clouds, particularly today when we've got very little wind. The wind's quite light. You saw when they were thermaling, the coils of the track were pretty much on top. The winds are quite light today.
Yes, and also if you've got a light scattered cloud, scattered being 2 to 4 octaves of cloud. So if they've only got 2 octaves of cloud, then then for a 158 kilometer track, that might be perfect actually, because they're not too close together. You're not getting too worried about each individual cloud. You've got a line of clouds ahead of you. And as Mandy says, you can look at the shadows and see how they're going. Yeah,
the other interesting thing about today's weather is there's a lovely convergence down the what's called the York Peninsula, which is like a little Italy to the west of South Australia, shaped very much like the country of Italy, and it gets a sea breeze from both sides. And so there's a beautiful line of clouds. If you look out the window, you can see them. It goes straight down the middle of York Peninsula. And that's a flight that pilots from here will often do on days like today. We did vaguely think about sending our pilots down there, but it was a bit too silly, so we didn't. But it would be lovely to be able to do that. It's a very consistent pattern.
So would they typically go up to Balaclava like that and around into it?
Yeah.
As opposed to sending them across the big water crossing?
Well, yeah, because it's not usually that high. It's only usually about 4.5, but the airspace is 4.5, so it's perfect. Right. I mean, sometimes they'll cut the corner at the north on the way back if they're confident. Yeah, so it's fun to do that. It's a fun thing to do. But not today. Today they're going to Wirrabura.
Yes, and this body of water here is called the
Spencer Gulf.
The Spencer Gulf. Now, that is, at Gawler itself, you're 150 feet above sea level. But if you go just to the east of Gawler, then you come into some beautiful rows of hills where Mandy lives. And you get beautiful views, gorgeous views looking down towards the coast, and you can see the water from there.
Called the Adelaide Hills.
The Adelaide. Oh, that is part of the Adelaide Hills. Yeah. So they're still all very much together.
Yes. Although Matthew's fallen off the back. But he's higher. Same as yesterday. He did that yesterday, didn't he? So.
And actually the same as all week, really. Yep, he is. Yeah, Matthew said he was enjoying flying with the others in Gaggles, but he's a bit behind them now. And the trouble is, on a day like today, from my own personal experience at least, once you begin to fall behind, fast gliders ahead of you on a good day,
it's not a good feeling.
Then how do you catch them up? By flying 20 kilometers faster than they are?
Yeah.
They're going to be flying fast anyway.
Yep. Although at least if you're doing that, you can fly your own race. You're not distracted.
That's right.
You can pick your own route and do your own thing and trust your own judgment. And there's some value in that, I think, sometimes. Yeah, and you might find that you end up doing something different and get to that top turn point and you're surprised that you're there at the same time as everybody else. Sure. And we know that Matthew doesn't have great points at the minute, and so it may be a day where he can take a different route and get a benefit. Whereas the others really have to stay together and follow each other and watch each other, because they can't really afford to let one of them get a jump on another. So it could be a day where Matthew's tactics could pay off.
Yes.
So if we got the forecast right, or the forecast we saw was correct, then the TAS should now be taking them straight along a line of beautiful cumulus. And as they get out of the airspace, which shouldn't take too much longer, they'll be able to climb even higher.
Okay, now here in TV land, as you know, we have all kinds of different tricks and treats that we can do. So I'm going to do a bit of a trick, and I'm actually going to pull forward a bit. So just leapt forward a bit miraculously in time. And they're now still at 2,800 meters, and Mac is still out the front.
But the others have stopped for a climb.
Yes, and the others have stopped for a climb. So Mac is at 2,800 meters, and so are they. So they needed a climb. So Mac is higher and further ahead. So it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that. But as everybody was saying on the grid today, they don't need to keep each other. I mean, they need to not be beaten by the other, but they don't need a glider marking a thermal so much for them. Is the big thing. On the earlier in the week when it was 4,500 feet and blue, then it's really very convenient to be able to see other gliders and see that they're climbing strongly and know where to go to get the climb.
So this is the first time I've seen them climb above 3,000 meters. So I suspect they must be very close, if not over the airspace line, and be able to climb a bit higher.
Oh no, that's right.
So we haven't heard any noise from the fire bombers today. We've had a few scares during the week with the fire bombers coming in for bushfires, but nothing today. Partly, I think, because there's not much wind, and I think they don't tend to harvest quite so much on the weekends. So fingers crossed that we have no issues and we don't have to make any changes or compromises due to the fire bombers coming in.
And we'll have another look at live gliding. With regards to is there a total fire ban here at the moment? Are there fire bans?
No, the numbers are quite low because the moisture's quite high. We had a wet spring and the wind's low today, so the numbers are good. So look, Peter's at 3,500. So they must have cleared the airspace now. They're Watervale. Actually, Lissingham is a really nice place to go for a glass of wine. There's some beautiful wineries in that area.
Right.
Definitely recommend it. Yeah, so they must have cleared the 10,000-foot step, so they're just heading past Mintara. Yeah, that makes sense.
So they're now, what's interesting about this view is it does show their speeds. Now we've got Pete Temple at 304 kph at the moment.
304 kilometres to run, I think that is.
Oh, sorry.
I think that's distance to run.
Yeah, actually, it would be a bit fast, wouldn't it? Flying at 150 knots. But I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yeah. There's so much data there, isn't there? There we go. There's the extra data that you need.
So his ground speed is actually 200. Maki Chikawa's ground speed is 210 kph. A little bit slower than I was expecting, but still, they're not pushing it quite so much just yet.
Well, Mac's lower, isn't he? A little bit lower. Yeah. So now they're starting to spread out. This is more what I expected, that they would spread out in this way. They're making their own decisions, taking their own climbs, and pushing on in different times. Yeah.
So Pete was up to 210 kph. She's slowed down slightly now. So they're all flying along basically at 90 knots. They're not pushing it too much on this leg.
And if they're in contact with the cumulus, which was anticipated, that's what I expect, you would do that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And there's no issue with the wind today. That there's virtually no wind. You can see it very slight southerly, maybe the way they're drifting, but there's really very little wind.
Yes. Well, on this view, Matt Atkinson is caught up and is ahead of them. In fact.
Good.
So that means that he didn't need to take that big climb back here, or not so much. He seemed to stop for a few circles, but he was already higher. So that means he's able to leapfrog in front of Peter and Jeff Brown. But Maki Chikawa is the one who's, if he can keep this up. Now, in some races in the European Grand Prix, you'd say, well, okay, well, he's heading out on his own. They're heading into mountains. He hasn't got as much information about the conditions as they have. Will he be able to keep it up? I've seen that many times in Grand Prix. But in the conditions today, they're flying the sky. And it could be that Mac is going to be able to just keep ahead of him. If he doesn't make any mistakes, he's flying his own race. And if he doesn't make any mistakes, then maybe he will. So there's Mac ahead, and we've still got a fair way to go to Urabara. Urabara.
Oh dear. It's like when Jeff had that incident with his trailer driving over here, and he told me it was, what did he say it was? I can't remember now. It was just a very funny pronunciation, similar to this, and that made me laugh. I know, he said Barama.
Barama.
Barmera.
Barmera, yeah.
Not
right.
Barama.
Yeah. Yes, well, it's like Sydney, where I'm from. No, it's not actually Sydney, it's Sydney.
Yes. There's certainly a lot of A's in the Australian dialect. Every word has at least 2 A's in it. So it's interesting. So there's a 1,200-foot difference in height between the highest and the lowest. How many kilometres is that worth? Who can do the maths? We need some clever person to tell us.
How much was it
1,200 metres. How many kilometres is that worth?
1,200 metres.
Yeah,
so that's 3,000 feet, so 30 kilometres.
Well, yes, but there's a time thing, isn't there? So how do you calculate that? I don't know how you work that out.
Well, if the other one was to stop, he could pull 30 kilometres ahead. But
yeah.
But yeah, it's good. You're quite right. So how if he well, essentially what it means is that he could fly faster and get down to their altitude, but it's a bit too early for that. On the final leg, I guess that would certainly be part of it.
The final glide, yeah.
Yeah, like as Peter was yesterday. We were watching Pete Temple. He was out in the lead, and we could tell that he had a marginal final glide. He was well ahead of them, and he had a marginal final glide. So if he stopped to take a climb, all of a sudden he wouldn't be ahead of them. So he had to kind of tiptoe along, and he did have to stop to take a small climb and just make sure he got without them catching up to him.
Yeah, we did a bit of analysis last night because he was roughly 2 minutes ahead.
Yeah.
So he could have finished low and taken a penalty. But he stopped for a minute, took the climb, and finished a minute ahead.
Yes.
And so they both actually would have been the same because the time penalty was 30 seconds per whatever. So the score would have been the same, but
right.
Obviously it was safer to take the climb and be sure of not getting a penalty because you could see that they were behind him. But it was interesting to watch and understand that the penalty was probably very accurately calculated because the time that it took him to climb was equivalent to the penalty he would have got if he hadn't climbed. So it was a good measure.
Yes, that's interesting. Well, he did the better part anyway. He did the better thing.
Safer option, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Also, just the better option. He finished the race without any penalties.
Yeah. And in fact, there were no penalties at all yesterday. The race was scored in about 3 minutes. It was a very fast score, which was lucky because our scorer was off flying out of Benalla. So I phoned him up to say, they just landed. And he said, I'll be landing in about 15 minutes. And then once he landed, we had the traces and we had the scores in about 3 minutes flat. So no penalties, it was lovely. So hopefully there won't be any more today. Though there was that question on the start whether Victor 8 might have been a bit high and a bit early. But the penalties take care of that, so they're not disqualified. If they start before the gate opens, they're not disqualified as they are in some races, and they are allowed to get a score. So
yeah, it was hard to tell. We won't know till we get back. Because just the view on this could be that he was just got to the line right on time.
I mean, the other nice thing about today is they've got a headwind at the start. On previous days, they've had a tailwind. Right. And they've been literally flying over the line at 60 knots trying not to get a penalty because the penalty is based on their ground speed because, of course, that's the only speed that the loggers can measure.
Right.
But it's caused them to have issues trying to slow down enough to get over the line without a penalty. So this is where we start to see the difference in height and distance come into play, isn't it? So Max stopped for a climb.
Yep, Max stopped for a climb.
And imagine the others can see him and they're going to head over there. And then they come together. It'll be interesting to see who's ahead.
Well, he's at 3,000 odd meters in climbing.
Now Peter is, yeah, but Max at 2.6.
Oh yeah, excuse me, Max at 2.6.
Yeah, so when they come together, it'll be interesting to see who's the highest. So it's showing a northerly wind now with that drift, isn't it? Which is interesting. It's only light, so the good thing here about a northerly wind is it keeps the sea breeze out. But on a day like today, the sea breeze actually isn't an issue because it only penetrates, the wedge of air that penetrates is only 3,000 feet high, and these guys are going to be on final glide and just fly over the sea breeze, and by the time they get down to 3,000 feet, it's a non-issue. So, yeah.
Okay, so in this view, Pete seems to be coming up very quickly on to Mac.
But I think Mac's going to be ahead. I think by the time Pete gets there, Mac will be higher.
Yeah, Mac may well have left even.
Yeah. Well, that's what you do, isn't it? Somebody's coming, right? I'm off.
Yes, that's right. Get out of here, absolutely right.
Although previously they were climbing to 3,500 metres, so if it's a good climb, he won't leave. I'm sure he'll stay for another 600 metres. So that's interesting. So the 1,200 metres, 30-kilometre thing, the height was not enough to even it out. And Jeff Brown, look, I'm sure Jeff Brown's seen them, and he'll be coming in behind.
Yep.
One thing that's interesting, and I might have mentioned this on the other day, but when we go to the Institute of Sport, the Australian Institute of Sport with the team for training, they can't believe how intense the racing is with the gliders, the fact that they race day after day. They think it's incredible that the guys have the focus and the concentration and the ability to do what they do day after day.
And Peter's coming in, and by the way, Mac was climbing at over 4 meters per second, so a good 8-knot climb.
It's almost line ball. Isn't that interesting? Okay, yeah. So only 100 feet in it. Yeah, okay.
Yep, so they're back together at very similar altitudes. So Mac pulled away with altitude, but went down low, had to make a higher climb. Pete's coming higher, and he's already in similar altitude to Mac. And Jeff Brown's coming in as well.
Yeah, Pete's always been quite good at thermaling. He's always flown small wings. Well, he grew up flying small wings. And I think it's a bit like tennis, where you have people that serve and people that volley, don't you? And some people are very good at thermaling and others are better at cruising. And you do see that in the statistics at the end of the race sometimes, that someone can have really good thermal statistics and bad cruising statistics, but the same speed as someone else that's got the opposite numbers, which is... I quite find it fascinating. I suppose it's a matter of taking the energy of the day, isn't it? I suppose they're just taking the energy and using it in a different way. Yeah, they're all back together again. So it'll be really interesting to see how long they stay together. I mean, from a tactical point of view, it makes a lot of sense. Like in sailing, you want to be next to someone that you've got to beat. But if they can keep this up for 2.5, 3 hours in a big sky like this, when there's such a depth of convection, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we were getting correct data from Silent Wings at this time.
Yeah, as they head further north, the phone coverage is, and of course they're higher. As they get higher and head further north, the phone coverage is going to be poorer. So the middle part of the task perhaps won't have such good coverage with the Silent Wings.
Well, that's interesting, and that's why we were actually using more than one type of tracking on this for this race, because we wanted to make sure that we gave you the best experience possible. It seems to be accurate on live gliding. Good on your live gliding, and the other trackers seem to have dropped out at this time from Silent Wings.
So of course this is based on satellite technology. Oh, sorry, satellite technology, isn't it? Whereas the other one, the OJ, no, this is rubbish. That's complete rubbish.
That's the other way around.
Rubbish.
This is their trackers.
I don't do IT. I apologise. The OGN is based on the FLARM technology, which relies on the ground stations.
Yeah.
The trackers are using the phone SIM cards.
And I'm not completely sure what they're using for Silent Wings, if not all three. Anyway, it looks like the Silent Wings one has dropped out for the moment. But the trackers from live gliding seem to be performing very well. And they're all still in this thermal. They're all in this thermal now. It looks like they might get 4,000 meters, which I say this is all predicted. So it's nice when the weather does what it's supposed to do, when it's forecast to do. I think tomorrow will be interesting, and to try and forecast it and set a task to make the best of the weather tomorrow, because we've got a trough coming through, as I think we saw, and the timing of the trough is what's going to make the task challenging tomorrow. But that's why we get paid the big bucks, isn't it? That's why we. That's right. Well, if you just bear with me for a minute while I get us the weather for tomorrow.
Certainly, I've seen the forecast for tomorrow is 40 degrees at this site, so it's going to be a hot day.
Okay, so let's have a look at the forecast for the next 4 days. So tomorrow, as Mandy said, we've got this trough. This is the one on the left is that's tomorrow. So the trough coming quite quickly from the high today was right over the top of us. We're moving left and being pushed away reasonably rapidly by this remains of a tropical cyclone up in the north.
And can you see how the northern part of the trough is almost connecting to that moisture?
Yes.
If they kiss, then all that moisture is going to come down the trough. Yeah,
that's right. So the hashed lines, for if you're Europeans or you're not used to this view, the hashed lines kind of mean that we've got moisture there, really, cloud and moisture. And if the trough line hits into that moisture and sucks down the moisture to South Australia, then it could mean that we have a more changeable day than perhaps is forecast. But so it remains to be seen.
So it adds instability and it adds moisture.
Yep.
So. Oh, Zulu's gone off to the left. Interesting. He did that the other day, didn't he? He was 10 or 15 Ks a beam off them and felt it didn't cost him anything. He was quite happy with his decision. The guys, the day before yesterday, the guys deviated off track for a line of Q for the convergence, and Dave stayed on track. This is the opposite situation, but
well, they stayed off track. They stayed going towards. Pete said that they were going to the line of convergence.
Yeah.
But Dave said that he just found that he followed the brown paddocks and got to climb every time. So why just change? It worked for him.
But I'm sure today they're looking up and not down. I think at the height they're at, they're looking up and not down.
Yes, that was a low day. So
must be a couple of different lines of cloud, and they've got to decide which seems to be the best. So they're getting a bit closer to the coast here. Hopefully the wind's holding off. We're not going to sea breeze. I think in any case they're high enough, it shouldn't really affect them. The sea breeze, as I say, is a small wedge that comes into 3,000 feet. The forecast is the sea breeze coming into Gawler about 3:30, and not so much up north.
So I'll just push ahead a little bit more. And so we've zoomed ahead a few minutes. We're only a few minutes behind them in real time, by the way. And Zulu, I think, went for a climb and now looks to be tracking a little bit more back to directly on track. But Maki Chikawa and Jeff Brown are directly on track. And Pete. So they'd be obviously good powered pilots. They can follow the purple line.
And where's Matthew? He's out the back somewhere, is he? Just a bit behind.
And Matthew.
Oh, no, he's closing a climb. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of where they finish today, you would hope that they've had a good day. I was saying days like this, if you can't enjoy a day like today, you probably shouldn't be a glider pilot.
Yeah, I'm sure they're enjoying it. They are all looking very happy and very much looking forward to the flying today. It'll be a lovely day to fly.
Yeah.
And, of course, one of the nice things, particularly in Australia on a day like today, is you're up at 10,000 feet. You'll be nice, beautiful temperature.
Cooler. Yeah, definitely be cooler. Yeah. The trouble with that is when you get low, it's really quite unpleasant.
if you get low, if you do lose it on a day like today, and you find yourself looking at the weeds, then it becomes extremely unpleasant.
Very unpleasant. Yeah. I feel very sorry for yourself.
Mm.
So Dave Peach, although he's taking a different run, he's higher, so it might pay off. We'll have that calculation to think about again, whether you're a certain height in a certain position.
Exactly, as you saw in the last climb, that they they all came together in the end, even though Max looked like he was way out ahead.
So there's the Goyder Highway. Look, it's nothing to do with the line, but obviously Mr. Goyder did a lot of exploring around here. That's how you spell Goyder from yesterday when we talked about the rain shadow and changing the soil types.
The Goyder line, right?
Yeah, so Mr. Goyder must have been going there as well.
So here we can now begin to get a bit close to the Warabra.
And it's much drier up here. This is sheep country. They don't do they have crops, but they're not as successful generally. It's drier. There's less rain, so it tends to be a lot more sheep, which gives you more opportunities for landing, which is good. And you can see it's not flatland. It's deceptive flying out of Gawler as you head north. There are some quite significant, I mean, not compared to the French Alps or New Zealand, but it catches people out because you don't notice the hills. You probably saw when you're driving to a house last night. It's quite lumpy.
Oh, yeah. We should have a good look at this terrain because it can be very unlandable.
Yeah.
It's not as dramatic as the Alps. But it doesn't make it any more landable when if you get close to that. But as you can see on both sides of it, they've got paddocks on both sides of it. And of course you'd be heading towards the hills because it might have the line of convergence, or it might just be pushing up the thermals a little bit higher.
Sure. And we're trained to use the creek beds to judge slope. Because there aren't too many paddocks that are completely flat in that area, so we use the creek beds in the way that they go. And the other thing is, of course, that the farmers will do contour ploughing in a sloping area. So now Pete and Mac have swapped places. I wonder how many times that'll happen during the race. So originally Mac was in the lead with Peter following. They've switched around. Yeah. And they're heading west in a fairly determined way. I wonder what they can see. It looks like they've got a destination in mind. There must be something. A cloud. A cloud, yes. Probably a good guess. Yes. Or it could be a bird.
Could be. But it could be that's where the next good-looking cloud is, and and then the following next good-looking cloud is to their right instead, and or maybe there'll be a nice street lining up. We've got the wind coming from the northwest, so it could be pretty north where they are going. The further north they get, the more northerly they'll probably be getting.
Yes. It was interesting. I did a radio interview. They were talking about the competition a couple of days ago, and for whatever reason, the commentator asked me if pilots will thermal very often with pelicans. I'm not quite sure where the question came from, but anyway, I was having to tell her that pelicans actually aren't particularly good at thermaling. I think the only ones that are worse are ibises. Ibises are particularly bad, and that we rather would go for an eagle or a hawk or something. But a strange question, I thought.
Well, I think that came because there's a lot of pelicans about because of all the water.
Well, true. It could be that. Yeah, the Murray mouth has been blocked for many, many years. They used to dredge it, so where the River Murray comes to the sea, It used to open to the sea. It used to be a river that drained into the sea, and for many years it would block, and they would dredge it, and that would flush out fresh water into an area called the Coorong, which runs along the south coast of South Australia, and that's a breeding ground for the pelicans. Once it became blocked, it became very salty. There were less fish, and many years the pelicans would just leave the young chicks and fly away because there was not enough food. But this year, you're right, there's a bumper crop of fish and fresh water and pelicans.
Yes, and I heard, speaking of another Australian bird, the Jabiru pilots here the other day were talking about seeing flocks of pelicans out on the Murray.
Okay, yep.
So I think
Makes sense.
that's where the ABC people were coming from.
Possibly, yeah. It'll be happy birds. I think our pelicans are the biggest one. I know I saw some once in America, and they're quite a bit smaller than ours. Don't know.
And it may well be true in the US too, but for our European, when you get a flood situation like we have at the moment, and you got water in what is normally arid desert country way up into the top of South Australia, Northern Territories, and the borders between Queensland and New South Wales, they're a long way from the ocean. And then when you get a big floods like this, you get pelicans going all the way inland up from the coast.
Well, of course, there's a story of them taking the boat, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
Yes. So when the explorers arrived in South Australia early on, they saw flocks of birds flying north, and they, for whatever reason, decided there must be an inland sea.
Right.
So they carted an enormous boat.
Yes.
To the middle of Australia, where there wasn't any water, and I think quite a lot of them died, and some were rescued by Aborigines. And I think they finished up near Enaminka, where there is some water. Yep. But no inland sea. I think, in fact, some of them went all the way to the Gulf of Carpentaria.
Yeah, that's where they were. They did. But so the Burke and Willis, I think it was.
That's right. Yes.
And they hauled the boat all the way to Tibooburra, up on the border of the three-corner country. Yeah.
Yes, that would win a Darwin Award nowadays, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But it was because of the sort of weather we're getting at the moment. They saw the big flocks of birds heading north and thought, oh yeah, there must be sea to the north. Let's take a boat and find it. That's
right. Well, they followed up they followed all the way up the Murray. Is it the Murray? I'm just trying to think. Yeah, it would just be the Murray. And until eventually they couldn't navigate anymore, and they left the boat there, I believe, at Tibooburra.
Mm. Yes.
They weren't able to follow the song lines. If they'd asked the local people a bit more, they might have found out that there was no inland sea.
Yes. Yes, they didn't cover themselves in glory. No, let's not go there. Okay, they're probably halfway up that leg now, I suppose.
A bit more than that.
Oh, yeah, because James told me now, yeah.
Yep,
okay,
see there
Crystal Brook. So, when I learned to fly, it was a place just to the west of where they are now called Lochiel, and Crystal Brook was my first cross-country ever, 50 kilometres in a arrow. You know what an arrow is? It's a...
Right, what's PPI up there?
No idea.
Okay.
Oh, Port Pirie, I think.
Oh, that's Port Pirie,
Port
right.
Pirie, yeah.
So where you were was near Crystal Brook?
Yeah, very similar, just somewhere there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not far from Snowtown. So we used to,
and
Crystal Brook.
An arrow, was it you said?
An arrow, yes. An old fabric, a bit like a PW5 to fly. It's very light.
And who manufactured that?
I think maybe it was an Australian thing that, it's a one-piece wing. Ridiculous trailer because the wings all in one piece.
Right.
Then we had a super arrow as well that we used to fly. That was the high performance glider. You had to get so many hours in the arrow before you could get converted to the super arrow. Mm-hmm. My first 300 in a super arrow. But I'm not sure what the history is or where they came from. Sorry, don't know.
But it wasn't Grunow baby and Grunow.
No. I've read about those. That was a long time ago.
Kookaburra, it wasn't the same.
Well, they looked, I mean, similar construction, same construction.
Yeah. Well, did you have any Slingsbys out here that time?
There may be some in the museum. Yeah, maybe some in the museum. I honestly don't know. We've got a very nice aviation museum in Victoria, near Melbourne. And
a very strong vintage gliding scene here in Australia too, by the way, with lots of interesting Australian and European gliders, including there's a Slingsby T21 in my airfield.
Is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Haven't seen it for a long time, but it's there.
I'm pretty sure there's a primary hanging off the hangar roof at Waikerie.
Ah, right.
I think. Pretty sure. Yeah. I always fancied having a ride in those kit things that the Polish children make, or the Lithuanian children make. They have an aviation project at school and they build a sort of primary type glider and they do little hops. Always fancied having a go on one of those.
Yep, this one's gone again. All right.
So they're staying high, so that's pretty consistent, I guess. It's good.
So we're talking about the fleet splitting up. They may have split up a bit. I don't think Zulu and David Peach and Matt Atkinson have been up with the leaders for a bit of a while now. So it could be that that they do end up getting more and more split up as they head into this turn point. But Maki Chikawa and Pete Temple are right with each other.
They're match racing again, aren't they?
Yep.
They'll be enjoying that. They were talking last night about different performance on the different gliders, and somebody made a comment that they felt that their glider at a particular point was slightly better than Golf 1, and Mac was very upset to think that Adam Woolley might hear about it and wouldn't be able to sleep.
Well, he was particularly pleased that he beat Jeff Brown in the straight race for the dash for the line.
Yes.
And that was between a JS1 and an Aventus 3. Was it the pilots? Was it the air? I think Jeff Brown felt that he made a bit of a mistake on that. He told me he made a bit of a mistake on that last leg.
Okay.
Which enabled Mac to leap ahead of him. So was it
leap at 9 seconds.
Nine
seconds.
9 second leap ahead of him.
Yeah.
So very, very, very close in these gliders and the pilots. So I don't think you could. The pilots are certainly very close, and
well, I guess it shows that the wing loading concept, whilst not perfect, is a very reasonable averager across the gliders.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, if they were in, as they will be next week, in a competition where they can do whatever they want up to the maximum, then see and different in the Australian Nationals in Waikerie.
Yeah. I was saying to someone earlier, this is a bit like a 50-over cricket match. It's a sort of short, sharp race. They all start together, different tactics, different strategy to the normal competition. Whereas in the normal competition, it's more like a test match. It's a more drawn-out thing where they fly for longer tasks. They do more hours in the air.
Yeah. And Waikerie is, where's Waikerie?
Here.
There, that's right. Okay, so if you can see, I'm not sure how will you be able to see, but Waikerie is... over here, there it is.
Bend in the river.
And we had the discussion last night, and it's definitely pronounced Waikerie.
Oh yes, one of the problems
some people thought it was different.
Oh okay. One of the problems we do have with the high river levels is that they've had to suspend the ferries. You can see there's a road that goes down to the river and then appears the other side. So they have little tiny ferries that you just drive onto them, and they run on a chain under water. It pulls them along like a ratchety thing, almost like a funicular, almost with a boat. And when we were there in November, people were going on the ferry just for the fun of it, saying it was like being in the sea in a storm. It was pretty wild. But now the ferry's closed, and so a couple of the other ones. And so you can see that there's not much to the north. It's just scrub. And so if anybody lands north of the river during the competition, it's going to be an awful big job to
get them out.
Back. Yeah,
you can't get across the river.
No, because you can't get across the river. Yeah.
So this river brings water to this otherwise very, very arid part of the country. And so that's Waikerie, because people will know that airfield from World Championships, and big place to fly. The other danger this year with being up on Waikerie, and don't forget, Mandy, is the potential for insect-borne diseases.
Yes.
There's with all the water, there's mosquitoes, and mosquitoes are carrying various diseases at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's always been an area where you could catch Ross River virus. Yeah. We know about that. But there's a new one, isn't there? Japanese encephalitis, I think.
Yes.
There's always something.
Yeah.
COVID-62, COVID-67, whatever it is. Whatever.
So, coming up to the town of Laura.
That's the sheep town.
Sheep town, right.
Sheep town. I mean, they do farm. There are paddocks, but it's just not as reliable. There's certainly a lot of deserted farms in that area because they tried and it just didn't work. Whereas the sheep are pretty hardy. It's interesting too here, of course, that the sheep here are born in the autumn, so they can go through the winter and have the water. Whereas I know certainly when I lived in Scotland, the lambs are born in the spring through the summer because they wouldn't survive the winter. So it's roundabout the other way. So they need the milder water, and feed, and so on.
Yes.
So a little bit north of where they're going is the Flinders Ranges. I heard a couple of people saying that, and Brian in his Arcus, I think, was heading off to the Flinders today, see if he could get there. He launched before the guys, took an early launch, and he was heading off to Morpina Pound.
Right,
which
very
is
nice.
Where Mac went on one of the practice days. Yeah, it's fair distance, but...
Yes, in an Arcus would be a great flight.
Mm.
And that's Brian Rao. That's how you pronounce his name, I think. From Adelaide Soaring Club. And here you can see, again, for our European guests, up there, the beautiful Lake Torrens and Lake Gardner, and all lovely and blue. They may well have some blue in them at the moment, but normally they're shining bright white and incredibly interesting colors of purples and earth colors of salt. And quite an amazing landscape to fly over. And
in fact, east of Waker is like that too.
Yeah.
We used to call it the Badlands. Around Renmark is very similar. Yeah.
And then further north, you'll see the other lovely blue lake, which is called Lake Eyre, the Lake Eyre system, which may well still be largely in flood. But I think a lot of the water may have already receded from there. It won't be in the full flood that it was. But normally, it's apart from the northern reaches of it, is usually this incredible salt lake.
And there's Whyalla. Whyalla is famous for the cuttlefish. The cuttlefish come every year to breed at Whyalla.
Oh,
it's
really?
an amazing thing, yeah.
Oh.
You go snorkeling or diving. It's amazing to see them swimming about.
Right.
So they're coming up to Wirrabura.
Okay, so they're...
They're still together, aren't they?
Have we
They're
got
still
all
together.
five? Matt Atkinson is
Gladstone. He's near Gladstone.
Is somewhat behind them. Okay, let me just excuse me for a second while I try and see if I can get more sense out of the silent wings. Oops. Get it over here and
Sure.
try and...
It's great that we've got this technology. It's quite different from years ago where you'd be standing at the launch point with no clue as to what was happening. In fact, people used to make calls, didn't they? Uniform Kilo Golf Ops Normal or something like that. They used to call in every so often with periodic calls to let you know they were okay.
Quite a lot of people still do that, actually.
Oh, okay. I've heard it for a long time.
Yeah, well, I was in the I was fortunate enough to be flying in the Southern Alps in France earlier this year, and they're in the mountains, but they have all the tracking information, and they're all carrying EPIRBs, etc. But nevertheless, the clubs people were making ops normal calls every 20 minutes.
Okay. Well, in fact, the EPIRB, the FLAM was developed in the French Alps, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
To try and prevent head-on collisions as people were running the ridges and sort of come around a corner and there'd be another glider head-on. So that was where the FLAM technology was invented.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously being used now for the tracking, but it was never intended for tracking. It was only intended as an anti-collision device. So
That's right.
I guess the fact that the tracking doesn't work perfectly is not due to the technology. It's the fact that we're trying to use the technology for something for which it was not originally intended.
Okay, so they're coming up to the after 158 kilometers, which they've been doing in pretty quick time.
That should be good calculator speed once they get there, couldn't we?
Yeah.
We could do a bit of a calculation. Oh, that was a message from Rob Moore to say that the ABC have been previously talking about pelicans.
Right.
And how pelicans are very good at soaring great distances, and that's why they were asking me about pelicans. There you go. So we know that at least Rob Moore is listening to us. We are not alone.
Okay, thank you,
We are
Rob.
not alone. Thank you, Rob.
Excuse me, people, while I try and get to restart Silent Wings. Oh, goodness gracious me. Sorry, this is just the setup I've got here. I kind of have to go through this little process and just trying to... Oh, God. So you can see how I do it, everybody.
I'll get to see your passwords.
But I'm having to do it this way in order to that we can bring you this live tracking, which is our backup.
Yes.
Anyway, I've only got two screens.
All right. Well, I'll just have a look at the time when they get there, because then we can get a speed.
Yep.
Like an average speed over the task. So the total distance they will have flown is going to be 184. Okay. And they started at 522. So 320. All right. So if we take 184 and divide that by the time when they get there.
Okay.
Let's see what it will be. It's going to be about 325, isn't it? So they start at 5. It's going to be about an hour and a half, isn't it? It's going to be about 90 minutes. About 1.5. 123. Okay. 123 kph. Then we can calculate when they might finish if the conditions stay the same. So if we take 380 and subtract 184, gives us the distance to go. Divide that by 122. 1.6 hours. Okay. Which is an hour and a half. There you go. So my rough back of the envelope calculation has them back here at 4:50.
Right, you were thinking it might be 5 o'clock, so 4:50 at the moment. Now Pete Temple's gone into the what I call the top turn point of Werber, and followed by Maki Chikawa and Jeff Brown coming up in very quickly in third. According to this, they're all going well into the turn point.
I wonder if it's maybe a bit bigger. I wonder if it's drawn a bit bigger than it really is.
But it's only a half a kilometre turn point.
It does say half a kilometre, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
500 metre turn point. So they're not really going in very...
Yeah, I suppose, metres.
But a little bit bigger.
Yeah, okay.
A little bit. They're not just kissing it, but then they have to go out in that other opposite direction.
Yeah.
And there's a cloud there.
Maybe there's a cloud there, yeah.
It's always a wonderful thing when you come to the turn point and there's a cloud right over the top.
Yes, much better. Yeah, so the reason we're interested to know when they're going to finish is not because we actually want to know when they're going to finish. We want to know who's won the bet today. Because
Yes.
the day's bet was to calculate when the last pilot would finish.
And the winners of this bet, by the way, get a marvelous mug, a Gawler Sailplane Grand Prix mug. Is that correct?
Yes. In limited edition, they're going to be very valuable. If anybody has one in 100 years, I suppose they can sell them for a great profit.
Yes, like a Sydney Olympics mug.
Yes. Perhaps not. Perhaps they can just drink their morning coffee with it. But anyway, it's a bit of fun, and every day we have a bit of a quiz, and so far different people have won it on different days. So something to do.
Yes, well, this is a very serious competition. These pilots are very, very serious and determined to win pilots. But it's been a very, very friendly competition. A low number of pilots, but everybody's friends and everybody's been having a great time, and they've been having some fantastic flying as well. The flying's been great, flying every day apart from one day.
Yep.
And
we've got a fairly small team. Adelaide Soaring Club doesn't have a great, what's the right word, depth of competition pilots. Even South Australia, there's not a lot of competition pilots. So putting the team together was tricky because we don't have that depth. But I've trained a few people to do different jobs, and they've all done an incredible job. They've all risen to the occasion beautifully. And you've only got to tell them once, can you please do this? Yes, sure, I can do that. And they've all been great. It's been really good. Some of the junior pilots have come out to help us on the hot days with the launching and things like that. So really appreciate the enthusiasm that the club's shown for the event.
Okay, I'm just going back to look at Matt Atkinson so that he doesn't get lonely.
He's high. He's the highest.
I'm not sure if we've got a real track for him. He's a bit...
maybe it's frozen. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it could. I'm wondering why he was quite so far behind. It could be that maybe his track isn't working because he doesn't appear to be moving. Yeah. So Matt Atkinson is hopefully a bit closer to the pilots in the lead. In fact, for all we know, he may well be up with them, and hopefully he'll pop back later on. Yeah. So
we need to check where he's got that tracker sitting on the glider. If it's got a good view of the sky, maybe there's some issue with the position of the antenna.
Yes. But so far, these trackers have been working great today and yesterday. So thank you once again to Live Gliding. And we're now heading to... Now, this turn point is to Jamestown is 37 kilometres, basically.
They're deviating. There must be some cloud or pelican or something to cause that. Because they're down... I mean, they're not low, but they're 1,000 metres lower than they have been. So it's funny, isn't it, on a high day, how you can get down to 5,000 feet or 2,000 metres and it starts to feel low. So they'll be looking for a climb, and of course, if Peter finds a climb, they'll all come in straight underneath him. So.
On a day like today, well, we normally try and calculate keeping the top third of the convection. So if they're getting up to 11,000 feet, which you seem to be, then once you get down to 7,000 feet, for me, I'm definitely feeling very low. for some of the competition pilots who'll be flying in Waikerie next week, they'll go all the way down to 3,000 feet.
Yeah. But it's not efficient. I mean, it's much more efficient to stay high because you get the extra distance from the altitude. So.
Absolutely, but we're also looking for the strong climb.
Yes.
And I know pilots who will just press on and press on and press on. No, this thermal's not good enough. This one's not good enough. I'm looking for now. The time is 3:25 local time here. The strongest part of the day. They're looking for strong thermals.
Sure. And thermal selection is important because they might only take 6 or 7 thermals.
Mm-hmm. In fact, we could calculate how many they've taken so far. But
yeah.
Okay, so Pete is now stopped. The first one to stop and look for a thermal here.
It'll be interesting to see if he stops and let the other one catch up so he can have some company for the next leg,
Yes. Well, Pete Temple, he's at 1,500. That's AGL. He's at 1,700 meters, and
no, Pete's at 2,000 meters.
I'm looking at the wrong thing again.
Yep.
AGL. That's right. It's floppy. See.
Yeah. Well, actually, to be fair to Sean, it did flick across just as he looked at it. So.
Yeah. So anyway, he appears to be climbing at 4 meters per second, so 8 or 9 knots.
And that was forecast.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that we're using SkySight, by the way, Matthew. Thank you.
Yeah.
SkySight's been quite good with the forecasts. Occasionally, we've had trouble with the troughs, like the practice day. The timing of the trough was, but everybody got that wrong. The bomb got it wrong, and that wasn't just SkySight. But generally, the forecasts have been very, very accurate and allowed us to set good conditions. The other issue we had with the weather here is that the local Bureau of Meteorology recording station was down. Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, it was showing temperatures of minus 54 Celsius,
Right.
Which wasn't great. And it didn't work for about a week or so, but I sent them an email telling them I was running a very important international competition and it was vital to the success of the competition. And they wrote back and said, we're on it, and it was fixed the next day. I'd like to think they did it because I wrote and told them I was running a very important international gliding competition, but it may just be they were just about to flick the switch anyway. But it is just so much more helpful if you've got the temperature so you can see that the temperature is rising as expected.
Well, while we're on the subject of the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, I want to say, take my hat off to them and say I think they do a fantastic job. They often come in for criticism, whenever anything's slightly wrong.
Yes.
But I actually think the Bureau here in Australia is really, really good and comes up with excellent information, well presented, and usually very, very accurate.
There's no wind now. Look, they're almost on top of themselves. There's hardly any wind.
Yes. So
quite calm.
So you tell me what altitude they're at, Manu, since I keep looking at the wrong thing.
Well, it looks like Pete's at 2.6 and Max at 2.4.
Well, they're in an 8-knot climb, 8.3 meters a second now. They're getting. So, like I say, they didn't want at this time of the day on these conditions, and
they're waiting for a good one, weren't they?
Yeah, they don't want a 6-knot climb.
No.
Now, the other day, Pete said he got, I think, an 11.5 knots.
He did, yeah. The day that he almost didn't make the finish height, he had to take the weak turn, it was his third last turn, he told me. So,
right.
Yeah.
Mm. So,
well, hopefully they get more of the same today.
Yes. We're getting average for the thermal here, but excuse me, but it could well be that at various points they may well be getting up to 10 knots and more. I'm sure they will be into the factory there.
I mean, the other help we had today is we had a number of club gliders that launched before the fleet, and so it's really useful and sort of reassuring to see them at 6,000, 7,000 feet before we launched everyone, because it'd be a little bit embarrassing to have a maximum start height of 6,000 feet and they couldn't get that high. They'd be looking up at the start as they cross the line. And of course it's fine and it's okay and it's perfectly legal, but it's not good form to have the line higher than they can achieve. Like having turn points on the tops of mountains. It's not good.
Yeah, yes.
Not a problem we have here. But yeah, there's certainly very little wind. Very calm. Today I think they might be seeing some dust devils. Before I came in here, there were quite a few dust devils, and we get quite spectacular dust devils in Australia. I particularly remember one day that was a 1,000k day, and there was just a line of dust devils in the distance. It looked like something from the Greek Parthenon or something, like columns just symmetrically across the ground. It's just unbelievable.
Right. Yeah, I've seen similar days, and it can be an amazing sight with such great visibility. You can see 150 kilometers and more, and you can just see, what look like tornadoes dotting the landscape. Astonishing, really.
Yeah, and of course, good lift.
Yes.
But quite rough sometimes.
Yeah, so not necessarily good to climb in, but they're very reassuring on a blue day to see them ahead of you.
Yeah. And fires, of course, are the other one. It's not this time of year, but later in the year, the farmers burn the stubble. They're doing it less and less, but that's what they used to do. and they give very good lift, but very rough. You couldn't share a thermal with somebody else.
That's
look,
right.
Matthew's around the corner. Look, he's reappeared.
Okay, so Matthew has reappeared now.
He's out of stealth mode.
Yeah, he out of stealth mode and jumped forward about 40 kilometers. So he's right on track, but still a bit behind him. What's his altitude? Can we see?
2-2.
2-2. So he's not
comfortable.
He's comfortable. He's certainly doing okay. But going back to our main group, who, as you can see, they've been doing quite a number of circles here because they've got a long way to climb.
It's my old spirograph used to look like that, if you remember.
Yes.
Spirograph.
Indeed. So at least 3,500 meters now we're getting.
So it'll be interesting, as I say, see if they wait at the top for each other or if they just take the height and go. I suspect they'll just go.
Yeah, or they may well just take it to the top.
Yeah.
If they're still climbing. We're still getting, Pete's up at 3,400 meters, still climbing at 4.4 meters a second or more, 8 knots or more.
Yeah, we've seen him at 3.6, haven't
But
we?
it may be Peter's heading off now.
Yeah, I think so. And Zulu too.
Yeah, they're heading off. So they got up to
3,300
meters, so about 11,000 feet.
Yeah, which is similar to. I mean, the peak was to be 14, but of course here they're in flight level 125, so they can't go so.
They
high.
can't go to 14 anyway.
No.
Right.
So we're going to count how many thermals, are we? You think it's worth looking at?
Okay, well, we can do that on this nice look from live gliding. We can see get a good view of how many thermals I might have taken.
Oh, no, we can't. The tails aren't
No,
long enough.
we haven't got the tails quite long enough.
That's all right. We'll do that tomorrow. We'll
Yes.
make a note tomorrow.
Well, we'll be able to tell you tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll look at the trace.
Yes. But I imagine it may only be 10 or something.
Yeah.
Because
They
they're gaining.
haven't taken that many. They only took 3 or 4 on that big long
Yeah,
leg.
yeah, sure.
So Matt Atkinson, who said he was looking forward to flying in a group if he could, is definitely out on his own. But for all we know, he could be flying with other gliders.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
There's plenty of other gliders out on. It's a Saturday here, and it's summer, and there'll be quite a lot of gliders from various clubs flying around.
Yeah, it's probably the best day we've had, I think, this year.
Okay, just going to leap forward a bit. Okay, so leaping forward right up until real time. This is precise real time now for people following us. There's no magic anymore. Just a few minutes difference before, but now we're right up at time. It's 3:32 here, as they all track into the next turn point, which is Jamestown. Mm-hmm. And after that, they've got another big leg going south to the control point of Sheer Clog, which is 146.6 kilometers.
So I'm just going to have a look at my phone and check the observations. The pilots were somewhat concerned about the sea breeze, only because we haven't had one before, and people that don't fly here all the time worry about it more than we do. I'm just going to check the observations and just see if there's any sign of the wind. Okay, so it's at the coast. There is a sea breeze at the coast, but it hasn't penetrated inland, so that means that they're going to be absolutely fine. There's going to be no problem. And as I said before, the sea breeze, when it comes, is only a wedge of air that goes into 3,000 feet, so they'll be well above it on their final glide.
Yeah, and as Pete's tempo has been reassuring them, they'll be on their final glide. And
shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
Although if it was a day like yesterday, where Pete had that marginal glide and needed to top up, they need to make sure they're comfortable.
That's right. I mean, any time you're coming home into a headwind, it's much better to come home with a tailwind. So anytime you're coming home into a headwind, and in fact, I've had that problem up in Narromine. I think I mentioned the other day that the sea breeze tends to kick in later in the afternoon because it has to come over the mountain ranges, but it often does come over the mountain ranges, and then you have this wedge of cold air underneath, and you can be looking up at the sky and you can see clouds 10,000 feet above you, and you're low on a marginal final glide, and then you don't have final glide. Once I landed 17 kilometers from Narromine under exactly such a day, with a half a dozen other gliders in the same paddock.
Oh, so you had good company. That's always a good thing.
We just couldn't get up because we were in the sea breeze.
I mean, you can climb in a sea breeze, you just can't climb very high over it easily.
Yeah.
So I guess if we stay at cloud base, once they'll be at final glide. I'm just thinking about final glide. They haven't got too much further, have they? Okay,
so final glide, if they get up to 11,000 feet, that means they can go 110 kilometers. So from 100k out, they could be in 18-meter gliders at 48 kilograms per square meter. So
no wind.
They could be at final glide pretty soon.
Yep.
Certainly 80 or 90 kilometers. I think they'll be feeling like they're at final glide.
Yeah, they certainly did that. That third leg, or fourth leg, is it? The leg from Jamestown South was from Wirrabah to Jamestown, I should say, was quite a fast leg.
Yeah, that would seem to go very quickly.
Yeah,
but I did leap forward 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. But even so.
Okay, so we can see Matthew Atkinson's thermal here, who's in the rear, and he's.
Well, he'll be having a fun day. I mean, I guess he's not going to win the competition. He knows that. He's come here to have a bit of fun. He's flying the Nationals at Waikerie later, so he's getting current by flying. It's different from his home club at Lake Keepit, which is completely different. So I'm sure he won't be unhappy when he lands.
No, I'm sure he'll be very happy after a nice flying day, but it's going to be pretty hard for him to think, I think, unless something radical happens for him to either catch up with them.
But he can fly his own race. He can just have fun and enjoy the conditions.
Yep. And
that's the beauty of Grand Prix. You can have a bad day and it doesn't necessarily put you out of the running, whereas in the Nationals, traditional scoring, if you have a bad day, it's much, much more difficult to recover, particularly if it's an outlanding.
Well, that's right. Or as Mac and Dave Peach had at the beginning of the competition, both had technical landouts because they breached airspace. Now in a Nationals competition, that would have made them put them out of the contention completely.
Yes.
And now Mac is back there, certainly in contention.
Yeah. Although when we say they breached airspace, it was 11 feet, I think, for 4 seconds. It wasn't a serious breach.
Yeah, well, Mac was 9. Well, yes, exactly, 9 feet.
9 feet was okay. Depends which log you
9 feet for 4 seconds.
Yeah. But of course, it's sudden death. There's no discretion.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I don't know if we're getting live tracking from Mac at the moment because he's gone frozen. So it looks like Pete Temple is going shooting out ahead again, but it could be that Mac is we're not getting.
I think they're still together. Dave Peach is sorry, Jeff Brown.
And Jeff Brown is right there with, and there's Zulu. So I think that Max, we're not getting data from him for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And there they are, pulled right back onto track now again, and they're maybe 20 kilometers south of Jamestown, and so they've got maybe 120.
Well, it should tell us, shouldn't it? It'll tell us how far to run. 147 k's to run.
147 k's to run, yeah.
So if they're at 15,000 feet, comfortable flying flight. Yeah. We'll be able to use that data and work out that they'll be close soon. Maybe by the time we get to Spalding. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they did see any of the other gliders, because we know that the other clubs at Waikerie and at Balaclava are very busy today with lots of launches. We can see them on the OGN, so we know there are other gliders in the sky. It'll be interesting to see who they came across or who they might have noticed.
Let's have a look.
That's only them.
This is another view from Glide and Seek. We'll have another look at that for a minute. Because our Silent Wings, unfortunately, isn't working at the moment. So there we have Gulf India. Silent Wings is showing them all very much together.
And that's got the distance as well. So,
147 kilometers to run.
The leg, Yes, so we've got 3 different ways of watching the tracking.
And we could just go to Glide 2 at the OGN.
Yeah, just to see the other gliders, I guess it might be interesting.
And this gives a good view of the airspace.
Right, yes.
That they must not breach.
Yes.
Now, the first step is the altitude on the 9,500 foot step. So even now, though, is that right? 8,500.
No, flight level 180.
But it's E-space. It's E-space.
And then here it's 8.5. But we've got this released to 10.
Okay. That's the release to 10.
Yeah, it goes past Kapunda. Yeah,
that's
around
206.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this area over here is the 206 where there's a release to 10. And up here, this is E airspace, so that's okay. Flight level 180.
And this is flight level 120.
Yeah, this is flight level 125.
That's not 125, sorry. Yeah.
So they're unlikely to breach the 125 at the moment because they've only been going up to 3,500 meters. However, here they're going to have to be down below 10,000 feet.
Yeah, this corner's an issue.
And that's the real issue, is it?
Well, it could be. It's an opportunity. It gives them an opportunity.
You've got sea space at 8,500 feet here, is that right?
Yeah.
And which they could easily breach. So
that's the D at 10,000 feet. This is 10,000 feet. At the corner.
But isn't that 8,500 feet there?
No, because we. Oh, sorry, 8.5 here, yes,
Yeah.
and then 10 here, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
yes,
if they're off track
Yep.
and are over here at Rinnie,
Riney. Sorry, it's another one.
At Riney, then they could be. Then they'd have to be careful there, but they may well be on final. They should be on final line by then.
That's what we said. We briefed it fairly well, I thought.
Yeah.
At briefing, I think they understand now.
So they have to be careful, but they're probably going to be okay. Okay, so this one, there's Pete Temple zooming out ahead, followed by Mac. So Mac has come live again and has caught up. So this is getting to the part of the race where you are actually going to want to be out ahead.
Yeah.
They do want to. Pete does want to be in the lead now. From now on, I think he certainly doesn't want to have to be catching Mac and trying to beat him on the last.
Yeah. So Burra that you see there, that's 100 k's from Gawler. That's a distance that I know. The issue with Burra is it's fairly high up, and they have mines at Burra. Burra's famous for the copper mines. Huh? A lot of Cornish people went to Burra, and they mine copper and nickel and tin. There you go.
And they were. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Spalding, of course, is a town in the UK in East Anglia.
Oh, is that?
I don't know what the relationship is with the Australian version, but
well, either a person's name or there are a lot of names in Australia which come from England and Ireland and Scotland.
For sure.
Many from the European settlers who came primarily from England, Ireland, and Scotland. But South Australia is also famous for having German immigrants come in at an early time.
Yep, we have a wine region called around Harndorf, which is full of Germans. That's more south than us. We've got another region, McLaren Vale, which is way south, but there's a wine region around Harndorf, and a name like Harndorf, you can imagine it's a lot of Germans there. So 3,000 metres is going to be about 10 or 11,000. So it's not quite glide, is it? I think it's not quite final glide.
They're on to distance to run is
138.
138.
Max pulled ahead.
I wouldn't call them final glide yet.
No.
But they're so they're all still very much together. Jeff Brown and Mac and Pete. Although this is showing Pete a little bit behind now, but he might be frozen now. In any case, these three pilots are the ones who really need to win. Now there you are. Pete just leapt ahead by 20 kilometres.
He must have one of those Q buttons. You know, when you do the simulator, you press a Q button, it gives you another 10,000 feet. He must have a Q button.
That's right. Yeah.
I know one of the competitions we came to, we gave everybody a Scrabble letter Q to put on the dashboard.
Right. Okay, well that was no magic from me or the technology. That was just the tracker catching up, and it's showing Pete having pulled ahead, and Pete is.
So now he's only 130 k's.
Right.
So he must be thinking he's close to glide, I think.
And he's also thinking he has to shake off Mac Ichikawa.
And not break airspace in the process.
And not break airspace in the process. And it's not just the glider that he's in, but Mac Ichikawa, when he has the bit between his teeth and he's on I've seen this many times, when he's on a final glide and on a straight race, he determined to not blow it. So I wouldn't like to be racing and have Ichikawa just a little bit behind me, because I know that he'd.
And he's very much a tactical pilot as well. He's done a lot of European flying. He's got a lot of experience flying in Europe. Mm-hmm. Just another message from Rob Moore to say that the Arrow was invented and built by Harry Schneider.
Oh, it was a Schneider.
Schneider, yes.
Wasn't sure if it was. I was thinking the Kookaburra. So it was a Schneider. Thank you, Rob Moore.
Thank you, Rob Moore. And of course, Harry Schneider had his workshop on Gawler Airfield.
Yes, that's right.
So,
well, the other day, Rob Moore was a guest speaker here with us, and he was telling me about that. We were talking about that. So I'm just going to go home and while they're racing, and why not? Just going to show you a picture of Rob Moore, who's been calling in with information for us.
Yes.
So there's Rob.
So Rob originally was to be the referee for this event. He had a bit of a health scare, which is sorted out now. It's all fine. So he stood aside as referee, but was able to step up yesterday and come along to the presentation and award the medals to the pilots. So it was a lovely moment, and we were all really glad to see him, and it was just lovely that he could be involved. So thank you, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Rob Moore. Please call with any other information you want.
Yes, tell us what we're doing wrong. If you're getting something, or if there's something you want to hear, if people have got my phone number, just send a text. If there's some information we're not giving you that you would like to know, we're happy to answer questions.
Yes, I should set up a chat thing so that we can answer questions.
Now, of course, by tomorrow, we'll have everything sorted.
Yes.
Couldn't be better. I'll just check the wind again by looking out of the window. And again, I can see scattered Q, like 2/8, which is just perfect.
Oh, actually, looking the weather looking out the window is very, very nice looking day now.
I don't think we should look. I'm going to cry. I don't think we should look.
Yes. Yes, it's great being here doing the commentary for the Sailpan Grand Prix. I'm really enjoying it, really enjoying the competition. But it's also the first few days weren't my type of flying days, low blue and windy days. But today is a day when you're down here wishing you were up there.
What you call champagne weather.
Yeah.
But it should be a pretty straightforward day. I mean, there are no real tricks to the weather. Like yesterday. Yesterday we said was homogeneous, and that's why it's such a good race, because it didn't matter where you went, it was the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Today, of course, there are going to be lines of energy under the clouds, and there's going to be the skill in that to make the best of the day.